All right, so the key thing that I want to cover today is give you a sense of like how technical this can get, but also like how useful it can get. And then when you guys are thinking about the careers you want to go into, the sort of the academic things that you want to do, hopefully you can learn a thing or two, and it gives you a taste of the industry as a whole, and the cool things that you can do from an AI point of view. So just to reiterate, I'll do my intro again, but the interesting thing about this presentation is that the majority of this presentation I actually generated with AI, all right? So yes, you know, the slides and the pretty pictures edited afterwards, but the core outline of the presentation, I went into ChatGPT and I asked it, I'm going to present to students and I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence. Give me a guideline on a number of slides that I want to talk about. And it basically gave me a couple of steps. And I said, okay, thank you very much. And I generate a Google slide deck for me. And it basically generated a Google slide deck for me. So it doesn't mean I don't know anything about AI, but the core thing that I want to get across is that I'm using AI as a tool to basically get across the points that I want to make today. And I think that's the key thing to remember about AI, is that AI will be a tool in your future that either you're going to have to master yourselves, or you're going to use, or you're going to be on the other end of it, either it being used against you or to your disadvantage. So that's something to remember. All right, so just another intro of me. Basically, I studied industrial engineering. That, I would say, is quite a good route into this whole data space, of which AI sort of exists within that data space. So who of you sort of plan to do engineering? Okay. Perfect. All right. Okay. All right, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover, say, theoretical elements, and then I think the second session, we've actually got 40 minutes to go through like really cool use cases. And the cool thing about that is that because we actually have our own software platform, we use AI in our software platform. Our customers use our AI on our platform, and I've got real world examples to actually show you how it works in reality. So that's going to be pretty cool. But the first thing that I want to do is just obviously cover the theory. All right. So what is AI? AI is a simulation of human intelligence in machines. Programmed to think and learn like humans, these intelligence systems are designed to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as recognizing speech, making decisions, solving problems, and understanding natural language. So that's a pretty good definition. Obviously, it doesn't go into all the detail, but that gives you a good picture. All right. So basically, AI didn't pop out of thin air. All right, that's the key thing to know. So basically, it dates back to the 1950s. I don't know if you guys, I can't remember the movie, but it was all about the Enigma code cracking machine of World War II. And the guy that invented that Enigma machine was Alan Turing. So basically, from the 1950s, this whole concept of saying, okay, cool, well, how can we use computers and data and let our computers learn over time based on that data to basically predict an outcome. So basically it goes 1950s, goes through the 50s, 60s. Obviously, you know, towards the 60s, there was a huge investment in technology from the rocket launch and the moon landing, etc. But then there was what's called the AI winter. So basically, after the moon landing, all research and stuff pretty much ceased. And from that point, more things started sort of dominating the technology space, like personal computers. You know, that's sort of when Microsoft started and Apple started. So all the big sort of tech hardware companies as we know them now sort of started from the 80s. But then what started happening is that as the computers were getting more powerful, they could do more things. And what really captured the heart and the imagination of the public was Deep Blue beating Kasparov at chess. Okay, so that wasn't traditionally, let's call it AI, it's not traditional AI, but sort of conceptually, it's a good way to think about AI. So basically then from the late 90s, AI advances, and as computers get more powerful, you can do more and more things with it. So fast forward to today, basically AI is ubiquitous in our lives, even if you don't know it. So basically, even if you go on YouTube right now, your recommended of what you should watch basically comes to you through an algorithm. The websites you visit are tracked by Google to train algorithms to feed you adverts that match your preference. So I'll give you a cool example of conceptually how to think about that, right? So if I look around the room, say the average age is 16, 17. Now, basically, I can make certain assumptions of all of you. So the fact that I'm in office, you're all boys. And I can say, well, you know, if I, for instance, ask you, what sports do you play? Rugby, right? So what that means is if I look at you and I say, okay, cool, you look about the same, you go to the same school, chances are you also play rugby. Maybe, maybe not, right? But that's a one piece of data. But if I ask the next person, oh, what do you play? And that might be hockey or chess or something like that. But if I get enough guys that play rugby and I know what attributes that person has, basically I can make assumptions about the rest of you that might hold true. So basically it's like generalizing, the computer is generalizing to say, well, what attributes make up this particular thing? So for instance, if I was selling something to you, I'd say, well, okay, you know, you're young, you fit, you're interested in learning. I'm going to feed you ads that are for my latest Udemy course, something like that. And then you would be more likely to click on that ad based on your particular profile. So that's just one example of thinking about how a computer will actually learn anything about you. It takes characteristics, and with enough examples of you, it can make assumptions about what the answer will be. Okay, so then there's two schools of thought in terms of where AI is, narrow and general. So what I mean by that is narrow means that it's designed to do a very particular task. So if you think about Siri, Alexa, Netflix, Amazon, or image recognition, those are examples of AI being trained to do something very, very specific. So if in the Netflix scenario, the only thing it needs to do is get you to watch the next movie or the next series and make you spend more time on the platform. And it does that through recommendation systems. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's more generalized AI. And so ChatGPT will sort of fall within that category where it's more geared towards general tasks. Like you don't necessarily need to train it on data. It's sort of been trained on particular data, and it's smart enough to know what you're asking it and sort of go back to its parameters and answer you effectively. All right, so basically the main difference, narrow AI is specialized and limited, and general AI is versatile and adaptable. Okay, so basically I spoke a little bit about how AI works, but one thing to understand is that AI is a general term for everything sort of underneath it. Within AI, there's something called machine learning, and that's sort of what I described when I said, well, what are characteristics about each one of you, and what assumptions can I make to either make a decision? There are neural networks, and basically there's traditional algorithms within the AI space. And obviously looking at data, that is a super important piece of AI. So if you think about, none of you guys probably have insurance, but one day when you get your driver's license and you get your first car, either your parents will pay for your insurance or you might have to pay for it yourself. But if you would be insured, the insurance company will ask you a couple of questions. First of all, they'll look at your license and they'll see, okay, this chap has been driving for 1 year, okay? And he's a young male and he's in university and he stays in this area and it's a Ford Fiesta ST, something like that. So when that insurance company looks at those characteristics and says, oh, out of all the claims I've had in the past, when a young male with a license with 1 year was driving a Ford ST, how often was he, or how likely was he to have an accident and therefore claim from insurance? So therefore I can charge you more because the likelihood of you actually claiming would be higher. So that's a good example of basically how machine learning and AI will basically impact you even from a cost point of view. Okay. So these are the three main sort of differentiators within the AI space. So think of them as sort of techniques of AI. So machine learning is basically when computers learn from the data to make decisions or predictions. Think of it as teaching a computer to recognize patterns without giving it explicit instructions. So I've mentioned a couple of examples, and insurance is a great example. A neural network is used within machine learning. It's inspired by the human brain, and they consist of layers of interconnected nodes. This is very technical from a neural network point of view. And then algorithms are just step-by-step instructions that a computer follows to complete a task or solve a problem. So those are three important concepts just to understand. All right. So none of these algorithms can be trained or do anything without information, okay? So they need to be fed information. So basically, data is the foundation of AI. So exactly how I explained in the insurance example, that insurance company needs all these examples of historical claims in order to make a prediction about the future. ChatGPT had to scour the entire internet to basically train its models to understand what you can ask it at random. So without data, AI systems cannot function effectively. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard the term data is the new gold or the new oil. So that's a term that's been going around probably for the last 5 to 10 years. And everybody's been frantically trying to collect and store data because they know in their future they're going to have to train AI algorithms on the data that they capture. And if they don't capture it, they'll never have the opportunity to train those models. So my second point there is obviously data is super important in the training of AI models. And ultimately, the more examples you give it, the more accurate these models become. So basically in the example of where I said, okay, you do rugby and you might not do rugby, my accuracy was 50%. But if I ask more and more of you and I build characteristics about each one of you, my answer will more likely be accurate the more examples I have. So that's one way to think about that particular concept. Okay, so what does this all mean and how can I use it? All right, so I spoke a little bit about Alexa and Siri. So basically in our daily lives, there'll be virtual assistants, recommender systems. There's huge strides from a healthcare point of view. So basically what researchers and the medical industry have done, for instance, if you took an X-ray of your lungs and you had enough examples of that X-ray, AI can recognize what's on that image, and if you give it examples of what lung cancer looks like and what normal lungs looks like, and you feed it new X-rays, it'll be able to tell you the probability that that X-ray has lung cancer. So basically, with enough X-rays or anything sort of on the human body, given the fact that the AI can recognize the image and identify characteristics about the image, basically then the need for sort of radiologists or AI can help support radiologists in their particular diagnosis. So that's just one example of AI in healthcare. And then obviously a big thing for you guys is education. I mean, I don't know from a school policy point of view, if, for instance, the school has banned the use of ChatGPT in your homework. Is that something that they've sort of publicly spoken about? Okay. Well, they are not. Okay. Look, I mean, I suppose it's new for everybody, and sort of everybody's new to the game in terms of this stuff, but I think it's important to recognize. Obviously, it will help you with your homework, but if you even think about it back in the day, I mean, when pocket calculators were a thing, and then you couldn't take your calculator into exam because you had to prove that you knew the answer. But now you can take your calculator into an exam. So I think from an education point of view, AI will most likely be the same. There's going to be this weird time where it's like, no, let's ban this thing, but nobody's going to stop it. So I think, people will embrace it and sort of learn to work with it over time. And ultimately, it could give you the wrong answer. And if you trust it enough to do your homework, you might get it all wrong. And then from a transportation point of view, so I don't know how many of you are familiar with Tesla and Tesla's autopilot. Basically, how that works at its core is that it's got cameras around the car. All those images basically feed into the central computer on that car. Inside the computer, there's a pre-trained AI model that's basically got all the definitions of what a stop sign looks like, what a car looks like, what a pedestrian looks like, what decision should you make when you see this scenario. And basically all those images are fed into that computer. And basically there's a decision made about what must the car do. So that is self-driving from an AI point of view. So those are pre-trained models that are basically sort of sitting inside the car, and the car can make autonomous decisions based on what it's seen before, based on what it's learned before, and based on what it's trained to do. All right, and just from an entertainment point of view, we might see AI being a part of our video games. AI might generate music for us that we might enjoy, and it's already generating art for us to consume if we want to. All right, so what is the good thing about it? So the good thing is that it automates a lot of repetitive tasks. So think about, for instance, even this presentation. So when I was thinking about the presentation, I'm like, okay, well, I can go out and list the things that I think I have in my head and put that in a Google slide. Or basically, I can just ask ChatGPT to generate that for me. So basically, that repetitive task that I would have either had to do manually or I would have had to do more research to find certain things, I can basically get an AI model to do a lot of that for me. From an accuracy point of view, basically, if I trust that the AI is going to give me the right answer, basically, I can rely on that output and say, well, that is basically an accurate assumption. And then, the AI might answer something that you never thought of. So it might come up with certain innovations that is the spark of a new idea that you might have. Or you might have the spark of a new idea and want to vet it against something like a ChatGPT to give you back an example. Like, you might have a great idea for some particular technology and say, well, okay, ChatGPT, has somebody come up with this before? Is there an existing patent for this particular idea? And then the model has enough context to understand what it is that you're asking. And if it's been trained on patent records, it will be able to accurately tell you whether that exists in the patents or not. And I think in the second session, I'll do a couple of cool examples. All right, the bad and the ugly. So AI is inherently biased, and that's not a bad thing. What I mean by that is you need to train it on some information, okay? So an example would be, say I wanted to guess what sport you guys did, right? And in this room, there's just white guys. And I look around and say, well, now I need to make a decision on the black person, the colored person. What will my algorithm say? I don't know. I don't have enough training data. But take an example, for instance, if one of you came to me and said, I want to borrow some money, okay? And I would say, okay, cool, let me understand the risk of you borrowing this money. And in my history of me borrowing money, I, for instance, have your age, your race, your gender, where you were born, where you live. And for instance, where you live, somebody may have defaulted on me before. And now you come to me with a perfectly good credit record, but my model says that anybody from this area has defaulted. So therefore, I'm not going to lend you the money. And now think of that from a gender point of view. Think of that from a race point of view. If you got a model that's generalized on a certain decision making, that might be biased towards a particular gender, might be biased towards a particular race. If you're a member of that gender or a member of that race, you might not get the right answer you expect because there might not be enough data trained behind the scenes to give you that information. So you might say, well, I'm denied credit because I'm young. I'm denied credit because I'm a man, etc. So it becomes very important to understand, what are the biases built into the AI, and that's just the function of the training data that you have. Then secondly, privacy is a huge concern. So for instance, if you guys watch YouTube, go on Google, it knows the device you're searching on. And for instance, if you develop a rash in an awkward area of your body and you ask Google, listen, how do I treat this rash? It stores that information, right? So either it's going to start recommending you adverts of a special cream that's going to do the trick, but it now has medical information about you as a person and basically can uniquely identify a certain health condition that you might have. You might be in a marriage and, searching for, lonely people, looking for a date. And and now all of that information is actually being stored, and you might sort of be labeled as an adulterer. So then thirdly, obviously there's an impact on employment. So what I mean about the bad of this is that if you were thinking about going to a line of work that is A, repetitive, B, purely administrative, these are the areas of employment that will be affected first from an AI point of view. Because when a business looks at its costs and it says, okay, I can hire somebody and they're going to cost me 30 grand a month, 50 grand a month, 100 grand a month, doesn't matter what it is. But I can subscribe to ChatGPT for 200 rand a month to automate some of the tasks within my business that I don't need a person for. What choice are you going to make, right? The AI is not going to sleep. It's not going to take sick days. It's going to give you the answer every time. And it's going to basically displace that administrative function. But if you think about it as well, over the passage of time, when the Industrial Revolution was happening and basically everybody was working in a factory, then came along automated machines and sort of steam engine and electricity, and equipment became more sophisticated, so you actually needed less factory workers. So those factory worker jobs got displaced, but they changed, the industry changed. So if you look at the employment environment that you guys will probably go into, that landscape is completely different to when I entered the job market, and that was only 14 years ago. So basically in 14 years, the entire landscape's changed. So I would think about this in terms of your future, your futures, and in terms of the things that you want to pursue, because AI is definitely not going anywhere.
I just want to ask, the two things that you mentioned was the administrative tasks, and what was the other position you said?
Repetitive tasks.
So I think that's a good thing to take note of, is repetitive and administrative tasks are easily replaceable.
Yeah, and even in my world, so my world is obviously, say, highly technical. It's say computer programming, it's working with data, databases, systems, etc. Even in my world, I can go onto ChatGPT and say, well, give me this piece of code that's going to do this. And when I take you through the examples, in our software, we're actually building AI into the workings of the software to save people time in building stuff in the software. So it's like this weird, let's call it circle, that basically we want to enable people to be more efficient, build stuff faster, so they can spend more time on creative problem solving that AI might not be good at. So that's definitely something to think about. And I think if I look at the committed, the person of action, the 1%, the 1% will understand this. They'll do something about it. Okay, so what does the future of AI look like? So if you do follow Tesla, you'll know that they've basically developed the Tesla bot, which will basically be like a humanoid robot that leverages, for instance, the learnings that they had on the automated self-driving, etc. So if you think about what that means is, you've got a robot, it's got cameras, it understands the world, it sees the world, and it's basically got appendages to interact with the world. So if you were sort of packing a box in Amazon or Takealot or whatever, and you can successfully program a robot to do that, and it can do it without sleep and continuous, that's what people will do. And then also the future is that AI will be everywhere and across everything. And exactly what I mentioned in our particular software, and guaranteed in most people's software, and in all of the institutions that you will deal with in your life. You'll have to open your own bank account. You will have to apply for a bond on a property that you want to purchase. You will have to buy insurance. To get the bond, you will have to buy life insurance. To get to work, you will have to buy a car. You will have to finance the car. So you will interface with these organizations that provide these services. And these organizations will interface with you potentially through AI, or AI will be a part of how you interact with those services. All right, so with all of that information, what can you do about it and how you can get involved? So I would definitely encourage you to look at online courses. So the great thing about this area is that it's quite an open community. People are quite free to share their learnings and collaborate on it. Nobody owns the AI space. That's the great thing. There's a lot of smart people doing some great things. I would definitely watch YouTube videos, look on Coursera, Udemy, etc. There's a ton of books and tutorials. Basically, if I did one Google search right now, I'll say, well, give me a tutorial on training a model to predict the euro outcome. And you can spend a night in Python programming an AI model that hopefully will make you some money, or not. And then what I would encourage, but obviously it's not for everybody, is start coding. It's a very, very good skill. If somebody had told me when I was 17, start coding, I think I would have, but nobody did. I only learned to start coding probably, 26 or something like that. So not even that long ago. Some languages I would focus on is the AI space is basically dominated by Python. And then, there's a lot of Code Academy stuff, basically to help you practice your coding skills. And the great thing is that in the software space, there's something called open source, which basically means that companies have developed a piece of software that you can use and you can freely use. You actually don't need to pay for. So there's a ton of libraries. One of the cool things and the cool examples that I'm going to show you in the second session is a library called TensorFlow, where basically it's a pre-trained image recognition model that basically looks from a camera's data and identifies what object it's looking at, which is pretty cool. I know for a fact that Tesla uses PyTorch as part of their AI training, and internally in our software application, we've used scikit-learn from a machine learning point of view. And then what I would encourage is to actually start your own project. So using these tutorials, you can basically start coding up a couple of things and then start your own project, like creating a chatbot, an image classifier, or a recommender system. All right, and then participate in competitions and challenges. So there's a lot of resources online. One really cool one is called Kaggle. Kaggle is a platform that publishes data sets, and they actually, industry puts problems on Kaggle, publishes the data set, and then you as a person can actually compete for the highest accuracy in your model, and then they actually give you money because you've solved that problem. So it's basically a good way for businesses to get their work done at a fraction of the cost. Yeah, and it's not super big in South Africa, but hackathons or local or online hackathons that solve real-world problems using AI. Also, it's a tough one from a school point of view. I mean, I doubt your school has an AI club. Is that something that is even a thing? I don't know. If you guys are interested, you might be the inaugural AI club starters for all I know. It might be something to think about if people are interested in the same thing. You might be the starter of Office AI Club. Obviously, there's a lot of online communities. And then from a real world point of view, I would say as an industry, a lot of industry is still adopting AI as part of their daily lives. So I don't think there's a ton of internships going around. But you'll definitely find that the big insurers or the banks, etc., chances are they'll have some sort of internship program, or even just volunteer. You might be on holiday and you might want to learn a little bit more, and you might say, I want to spend a month at a particular workplace that deals with data and training AI models. Can I do that? And then obviously there's a lot of blogs, news, research papers. And then obviously a big component is the AI and ethics around that. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of that. I don't know, am I on time? Just, yeah. So Q&A, and then there is the interactive session after this. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so although it says demo, I'll do the demo then. So any questions on anything I discussed, or any questions in general?